winter of 1991. On that particular day, Nick Nielsen was sniffling as he struggled to keep hold of a heavy television set. The TV had broken down yet again. Determined to get it fixed, Nick carried the TV over to his brother's place. Awkwardly, he began by ringing the doorbell and then moved to knocking, but there was no response. Frustrated, Nick set the TV down on the floor, used his own key to unlock the door, and entered the apartment, where he immediately noticed a trail of blood on the hallway floor. He quickly checked the rooms, but no one was there. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Nick decided to call the police. The apartment looked like a makeshift electronics repair shop, which, as it turned out, was exactly what the owner did for a living. Soon after, the police and forensic experts arrived on the scene. They meticulously examined the apartment, finding it in complete disarray. It seemed as if someone had hastily packed up, taking most of the equipment with them. The scene resembled a robbery. To piece together what had happened, the forensic team needed to locate the apartment's owner. The trail of footprints gave them a clue to his whereabouts. Following the footprints, the detective made his way to the balcony, where he discovered a pile of belongings. As he sifted through the items, a horrifying sight emerged: the bare knees of a woman and the exposed legs of a man. It was here that the bodies of Wick Nielsen, the apartment's owner, and an unidentified young woman were found. There were bloodstains in the bedroom, though no signs of torture on the bodies. However, the perpetrator had bound the hands and feet of both victims, using electrical cords and even trousers. A closer inspection of the apartment revealed that the door had not been forcibly entered. A blood-stained gas wrench was found on top of the refrigerator, but any fingerprints on the tool had been carefully wiped away. Meanwhile, the police began questioning the neighbors. They learned that the mysterious young woman had recently moved in with Wick Nielsen, but no one had the chance to get to know her. During the subsequent search of the apartment, the detectives found the girl's identification documents, which confirmed her identity. She was Anastasia Gibson, 26 years old, and according to her ID, she was married. This led the detectives to consider whether the gruesome crime might have been the act of a jealous spouse. The husband was quickly located and brought in for questioning, where he offered his version of events. Jack, the husband, was a sculptor. He recounted that he had met Anastasia at a party one evening. She was lively and full of energy, which immediately captured his heart. Unable to resist her charm, he invited her to model for him. Anastasia agreed but never showed up. Jack was deeply offended by Anastasia's behavior. Feelings of jealousy started to consume him, and he found himself willing to do anything to keep her. A week later, he unexpectedly ran into Anastasia again. Fearing he might lose her once more, he impulsively confessed his love and proposed marriage right then and there, without a moment's hesitation. Anastasia circled around him, undressed, and then agreed. 2 weeks later, they were married. Jack's love for her was intense and irrational. His jealousy knew no bounds, and it soon began to irritate Anastasia. She enjoyed going out with friends until the early hours, disappearing for days to another city without even informing her husband. One day, Jack stumbled upon a letter hidden among his belongings. In it, Anastasia vividly described her escapades with other men, writing to a friend. Furious and without thinking twice, Jack packed up her things and threw her out of the house. He immediately filed for divorce. However, later he found himself pleading with Anastasia to return, but by then she had already moved in with another man. It was around this time that Anastasia was murdered. The detectives questioned Jack thoroughly. He vehemently denied any involvement in the murder, though he did admit to being jealous. He claimed that he was out of town at the time of the crime. When the detectives checked his alibi, it held up. However, something happened during the investigation that shifted its direction. While verifying Jack's alibi, the detectives noticed something peculiar at his house: a jacket with bloodstains and a torn collar. Jack explained that the jacket belonged to his brother, Steve. The detectives decided to investigate Steve. When they questioned him, it came to light that there had been a previous altercation between the brothers over jealousy, during which Jack had torn Steve's jacket. The detectives then checked Steve's alibi, confirming that he had been at work on the day of the murder. Around the same time, a similar murder took place in the city. A student named Tina Hawkins was found dead in the flat she had been renting. Forensic analysis and a thorough examination of the apartment revealed that Tina had been struck on the head with a heavy object. Additionally, video equipment, a tape recorder, and some tapes had been stolen. The perpetrator left no fingerprints, and the murder weapon was identified as a kitchen hammer, which had been taken from the flat itself. Detectives began investigating Tina's background. She was part of the so-called Golden Youth, always out at parties until dawn, frequenting expensive clubs. Her flat was a popular spot where groups would gather to watch videos and dance. On one of these nights, her fiancé, Kevin, discovered her lifeless body. When questioned, Kevin seemed unsure of himself, displaying a bit of nervousness but offering no substantial information. This behavior struck the detectives as suspicious, so they decided to keep an eye on him. Their instincts were correct. Kevin was a struggling student, always short on money. When he met Tina, he realized she was wealthy and decided to pretend to have deep feelings for her to get access to her money. However, Tina soon became suspicious of his intentions and confronted him directly. Realizing their relationship was doomed, Kevin decided to steal something valuable from her luxurious flat one last time. While he was attempting to hide a VCR, Tina caught him in the act and threatened to call the police. Panicking, Kevin grabbed the first objects he could find in the kitchen, a carving axe and a hammer, and attacked Tina. Afterward, he tried to cover up his crime, taking the VCR with him. An hour later, he returned to the flat and reported that he had found Tina's body. However, his actions soon led the police back to him. Meanwhile, Mr. Davidson, a friend of the murdered Wick Nielsen, contacted the police. Mr. Davidson owned a small repair shop, and one day, a man brought in a rare broken tape recorder for repairs. Davidson immediately recognized it as the same model his late friend Wick had owned. The police quickly began searching for this mysterious man. When they found him, he was visibly shaken by the police's visit. He admitted to buying the tape recorder from an acquaintance and claimed to have no knowledge of its original owner. At the same time, the police uncovered another lead. One of Wick's neighbors recalled seeing two young men loading heavy crates into an old car. The neighbor was able to describe one of the men and even helped create a sketch. To the police's surprise, the sketch closely resembled Kevin's younger brother, Luke. The detectives were nearly convinced that the real murderers and thieves were standing right in front of them. However, proving the brothers' guilt was still necessary. Kevin was brought in for further questioning. For a long time, he refused to confess. But when he realized that the evidence against him was overwhelming, he resorted to deception, throwing tantrums, and even threatening suicide. Eventually, he broke down and revealed the truth. As it turned out, Kevin had previously worked part-time at the same company where Wick was employed. On one occasion, Wick had invited Kevin over to his place. It was late, and the journey back was long, so Wick offered Kevin to stay the night. Kevin accepted the offer, but sleep eluded him. Jealousy gnawed at him as he observed Wick's comfortable lifestyle and tastefully decorated flat. Kevin, accustomed to making a quick profit from any valuable item he came across, couldn't help but notice the abundance of valuable things in Wick's flat. The thought of taking something and selling it caused his throat to go dry with anticipation. He went to the kitchen to get a drink of water when his eyes landed on a heavy gas wrench. Without much thought, his hand reached for it. Seizing the opportunity while Wick and Anastasia were fast asleep, Kevin crept into the bedroom. His attention was immediately drawn to the expensive and rare tape recorder. He swung the wrench, and the victims had no time to react. Afterward, the killer bound their hands and feet, then dragged their bodies to the balcony. Leaving the flat, Kevin later returned with a lorry taxi to remove the equipment. He called his younger brother Luke to assist him with the heavy lifting. Luke understood exactly what had transpired in the flat, but he gave no indication of it. He didn't ask any questions and simply helped load the boxes into the car in silence. As the investigation continued, other incidents involving the brothers came to light. They had been stealing various items for some time: tires, spare parts, and anything else they could get their hands on. The desire for easy money had long been ingrained in both of them. However, these petty thefts paled in comparison to the brutal murders they had committed. No one has the right to decide who lives and who dies. When the court delivered its verdict, it left everyone in shock. The murderer and thief was sentenced to just 8 years in a general regime colony, while his accomplice brother received a mere 4 years. It seemed like a complete travesty of justice. However, the prosecution did not give up the fight for justice. They succeeded in having the case reviewed. As a result, the older brother's sentence was increased to 15 years in a strict regime colony with the confiscation of his property. The younger brother's sentence was also extended to 8 years. This case became a striking example of the new era where the lust for easy money and greed drove people to commit the most heinous crimes.